Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 44, featuring the top 5 wisest characters. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight, we're getting wise. And no, it's not Ray Wise, who played Arturus in Voyager's Hope and Fear. And it's not Robert Wise, who directed Star Trek the Motion Picture. Tonight, we're getting into our top 5 wisest characters on Star Trek. And I'm very fired up about this topic because what does it mean to be wise? I think everyone is going to have a different take on that. And we'll find that out a little bit from our guests, how they look at it when we get into our Prime Directive for tonight's show.
Captain, the most elementary and valuable statement in science, the beginning of wisdom, is, I do not know. I do not know what that is, sir.
And joining us tonight to break down our top 5 wisest characters in Star Trek, our frequent guest host on the show, Mr. Josh Duffy, our good friend from the Seattle sector of the USA Quadrant. Welcome back, Josh. I think this is your 4th time.
Is it my 4th time already?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this one. And Robert, it'll be good to talk to you too.
That's our next guest. He is Robert Red Sweater Reyes. He's well known. He's a staple of fandom at the annual Star Trek Las Vegas convention and other events that you'll see him at. And he is known for his red sweaters. He's also the host of the Promenade Pod. We love this guy and his enthusiasm for Trek. Robert, welcome to the show finally, man.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I'm wearing a red sweater just for the occasion.
I love it. We don't do video, but I knew you were just... I always picture you in a red sweater. That's, although every once in a while you break out that blue sweater, and that throws everybody off.
I'm wearing a tie, if that counts.
Oh, that's terrible. That's just sad to hear. All right, Robert, we always, for our first-time guests, we like to get into a little quick background on your Trek origin story. So tell us a little bit about how'd you get into Star Trek? I'd like just to get a feel for how you became a Trekkie.
Well, living in the Los Angeles area, it was always on in syndication on Channel 13. And the first Trek movie I ever saw was on Select TV, if you remember that. They were showing Search for Spock, and it was the last 20 minutes. And to this day, I have no idea why that was on in the living room.
But that did it. That hooked you up.
Yes.
I do remember Select TV. Holy crap. That is a long time ago. All right. That's awesome. Let's jump into our quick TrekRanks recalibration here to get this show started. General order. Number 1, if you listen to the show, you know, is that we love Trek. We love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. Because quite literally, our favorite thing to do here is to talk about Star Trek, and that is why this podcast exists.
Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And as the very wise Vulcan Master just told us, our show is about all the reasons that we love Star Trek. So we're not here to nitpick or to argue, but just to celebrate the greatness of Trek. We love it all here, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery, of course, as well. So it's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And just a quick reminder that Discovery Season 1 spoilers are potentially in play. And one more reminder that we use the term episode when we're talking about the 13 films, which are obviously also in play as well. It's an easier catch-all to call everything an episode.
Hailing frequencies are open.
And if you would like to contact TrekRanks, the best way to do that is to find us on Twitter at TrekRanks or me directly at Enterprise Extra. And you can also call and leave us a message with your picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. All right, so to wrap that up, let's check in with our guests so they can tell everybody how you can get a hold of them. So, Josh, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Best way to reach me is usually on Twitter, and I am Josh Duffy, and so it's at JM_Duffy, DUFFY at Twitter, and it's mostly Star Trek talk with a few political things or sports talk in there every once in a while, but lots of Star Trek.
All right. And how about you, Robert?
I'm also on Twitter, Robert Reyes, at Robert Reyes, RobertReyes. And there's some Star Trek talks, other non-Star Trek talk, and I have the link to the podcast Twitter on my profile as well.
All right. Promenade Pod, right?
Yes.
All right. So this week, we're basically combining the diagnostic cycle with our Prime Directive. I think it's kind of hard to talk about this topic without giving away how you approached it and made your pick. So we're going to get into our Prime Directives right now.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
So, Josh, let's start with you. First, tell us we like to do this when we do this kind of topic. Tell us a non-Star Trek character that you think of as wise, because I think that will help frame some of your picks and give them some context. And then, so while you're doing that, then tell us generally what you think about what you think makes a character wise and how you look at it and how that maybe help frame your Prime Directive for your picks tonight.
So you bet. First of all, I think that this was of the episodes that I've been on, I think this was one of the most difficult topics. Starting with just trying to think of, I had a few characters that sprung to my mind, both from, fiction and books and TV or movies as being wise, but to start to think about that together with Star Trek. And so my non-Trek related wise character would be Hawkeye Pierce from MASH.
Oh, love that one. Perfect.
So MASH, for those that don't know, is a TV series in the 70s and 80s that ran for many, many, many years, set in the Cold War, but really a commentary on set in the Korean War, but really a commentary on the Vietnam War. And so looking at Hawkeye Pierce, kind of what I think of Hawkeye as being a keen observer of war and humanity. And he said at one point when he was talking to a chaplain, Father Mulcahy in the series, he said, "War isn't hell. War is war, and hell is hell. And of the two, war is a lot worse." And the Father Mulcahy asked why, and he said, "Who goes to hell? A sinner. There are no innocent bystanders in hell. War is full of them. In fact, except for some of the commanders, almost everybody involved is an innocent bystander." So I remember that line as just being, I thought, particularly wise and a discussion on humanity and an observation on war. So that was the first thing that came, or one of the first kind of wise characters, non-Trek related, that came to my mind. And I grew up watching a lot of MASH. So
yeah,
close to Hawkeye.
That's a fantastic pick. Knowing that you picked him, he matches a lot of my type of characters and my Prime Directive as well, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's an awesome pick, and I think it gives everyone a good feeling for the kind of character you're going to look at when you're making your list.
Yeah. So diving into a little deeper, kind of how I took that and that informed my my picks for our episode or our podcast. I was looking for characters like Hawkeye who are wise, not because their character was designed to be wise, which I'll talk about maybe a little bit as we kind of go through what I mean by that, but because their character has a deep understanding about some aspect of life, or because the character is seeking that type of understanding. It's learning or assimilating, if you will, those lessons that come with wisdom. Yeah. So I was looking for characters that had a great impact on the crew or the series, and that led me, and I don't know if this took either one of you, but it led me to look primarily at main characters or recurring characters rather than one-off.
Right.
Looking for characters that had a little bit more of an impact. At the same time, I looked less at characters that were designed to be wise, which led me a little bit away from the captains, for example. I won't argue one bit that any anyone who picks a captain that it wouldn't be wise. But I was looking for someone that was fit a little bit more with my Prime Directive, which wasn't necessarily a character that was designed to be wise as much as that was almost a secondary or a hidden effect, if you will.
Okay, that makes sense. That would probably eliminate a few. All right, I love it. How about you, Robert?
Well, I went in a slightly different direction, so I actually looked up the definition of wise in the dictionary, and I came up with 4 definitions, and I based my picks off these 4 definitions, which, believe it or not, Hawkeye Pierce was one of my non-Trek picks.
Awesome.
Love it.
Let's hear those 4 definitions.
Number 1 would be characterized by wisdom, marked by deep understanding, keen discernment, and a capacity for sound judgment. Number 2, evidencing or hinting at the possession of inside information, possessing inside information, crafty, shrewd. Number 3, insolent, smart alecky, fresh. And number 4 is an archaic definition, skilled in magic or divination.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay, so you looked at that. So who's your non-Trek character?
Well, Hawkeye's already been taken. I'm going to have to go with President Josiah Bartlett from The West Wing.
Oh, yeah.
Also a fine choice.
Yes.
He's a huge West Wing fan, and Martin Sheen was able to bring this depth into this character he had all of these complexities. He was a very intellectual man, and he was a very religious man, and he was able to merge the two together when he had to be the head of state with crises both in the White House and outside of the White House.
Right. No, that's a great pick. Those are absolutely 2 great picks. Although for you, Josh, I would think Bartlett would maybe not qualify.
Yep, I would have probably have not picked him for the same reason, and not arguing that at all.
Although you could argue Hawkeye was designed to be wise too, but he's more of an observer, right? He's not
right.
Like the smart guy with the answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, a lot of even some of my picks are going to be characters that are designed to be wise,
right.
But it's trying to have it be a little bit less of a Gandalf or a Dumbledore type.
Right. I understand. Yeah. So I was really looking forward to hearing kind of how you guys broke down and defined your Prime Directives, and you did not disappoint. That is great. So for me, I really came down. I kind of ended up focusing on the fact that when I think about, I always think there's a big difference between being smart and being wise. So for me, wise doesn't mean you always make the right decision. It more comes down to the way you approach decision making and problem solving. So it's not necessarily just being right, but how you go about your business. And I also think of wise, I kind of got into this trap. I don't know if it's an accurate definition or not, but for me, someone that's a wise character has a high moral center, and they're thinking about what's right from wrong. And I also got into this where I think of them as a calming presence. So they're not agitated or super bombastic, and they're very measured in their decision making. So my non-Trek pick for my wise character, and this was pretty hard for me to do because there's so many anti-heroes right now, and all those anti-heroes don't really fit the way I look at someone wise. So I did think about Agent Coulson on Marvel's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a current pick because I do like that character. I like the way he approaches the challenges in front of him. But my overall choice, because of how she makes decisions and stays calm in the midst of all the crap happening around her, is Police Chief Marge Gunderson from the classic Coen Brothers film from 1996, Fargo.
That's a great pick.
And I hope you've seen this film.
Yes.
Yeah, because you might not think of her as wise when you see her, but if you haven't seen her, if you haven't seen the movie, you need to see it. It's a classic. But she's just super smart and wise in how she directs people and how she cuts through everything that's happening and kind of can see through people for who they are. People aren't necessarily coming to her searching for the answers, but she's got all the answers, and she's super calm, and she just moves at one speed. Brilliant character. One of my favorites. So that was my pick. So I like these 3 picks, and I think This is going to be an awesome show. All right, let's.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much overlap we'll have.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of duplicates there are. I mean, I've got to think there'll be some.
Right.
But I'm like you, Josh. I struggled not with necessarily coming up with names, but being satisfied with my picks.
Yeah, so did I. In fact, I talked to Jim offline briefly and mentioned that I was still revising my list as of midday today.
Yeah, understood. That happens a lot on TrekRanks. All right, third Romaticon, tell us about the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
And just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our original TrekRanks 5 words and a hashtag summary to tease our pick. Then we'll reveal our wisest character, and we'll also identify one episode that we think personifies that character's wisdom in the best way. And at the end, we'll rattle off a few secondary system selections for the picks that maybe just missed our list. So, as always, if we have any duplicates, make sure you listen for this sound. The Defiant Torpedoes. All right, Josh, let's start with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 wisest characters?
So this one might come as a shock to some, but my 5 words are: her quest was not futile, and hashtag fun will now commence.
I already love this pick.
For those that didn't know, couldn't figure it out from that, which I can't imagine would be anyone, this would be 7 of 9 from Voyager.
Fantastic.
And I really I struggled a lot with who would be, who would make my list, and I kept going back and forth about whether or not I thought 7 was wise. And in looking at my, the way I kind of think of wise, and it goes back partly to what I believe might be Socrates, in that a lot of being wise is knowing what you don't know.
Yep.
That's kind of how I look at 7. Is it's really, she's a struggle. It's a struggle for her trying to find out what it means to be an individual, what it means to be human apart from the Borg. And so that's really where her wisdom comes to me, is in this struggle, and how, her interactions with everyone and everything that she goes through informs her and develops her, and she grows wiser.
I love that pick. So what episode did you pick?
So the one that I thought of, as there were a few, but really Imperfection, where she is not going to die, but possibly going to die. And she has a couple discussions, one with B'Elanna and one with Captain Janeway, about what death means. And, particularly with B'Elanna, it's what does it mean to die? How is it different from a Borg to a Klingon? What does death mean to each of those? And I found, her exploration of that, and her discussion with Captain Janeway about her having failed Captain Janeway and her attempt to become an individual, and then Janeway saying, you haven't failed, you've succeeded. I just found to be very deep and profound, and I like the discussion of what we don't know about death and the different ways to look at death.
I love it. That's a great deep cut choice, and that's the one at the end where Icheb ends up giving her the nodule or something that she needs, right?
Yep.
Yeah, to save her. Yep.
And then at the very end, she's still crying even after having been saved, if you will.
Yes, yeah, that's a great moment. Robert, what's your take on 7 of 9?
That's a great pick. Yeah, 7 was one of those characters that I think grew on me later on in life. I wasn't a fan of her the first time.
All right, well, that's Robert. He's no longer going to be on the show. I'm just kidding. We love 7 of 9. She's like, she's definitely top 10 TrekRanks characters. Yeah. All right, so she grew on you later, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all of Voyager grew on me in like a subsequent rewatch later on. I had issues with Voyager, but that's for another podcast.
No, that I understand. I mean, a lot of people feel that way, and they come around. Okay, so 7 of 9. I love that. Good first pick. Robert, who's your round 5 pick?
Okay, my 5 words are the Devil versus Captain Picard, hashtag Feklar ? Going off my definitions, the archaic definition, skilled in magic or definition, and I combined it with crafty and shrewd. My number 5 pick is Ardra, from Devil's Due.
Oh, this is an outside the box pick. Well done, Robert. And I could ask you why you picked her, but I think now I know why, because she's a carny and a con artist who gets the better of everybody.
Yeah, and she almost gets the better of Captain Picard, but they find the ship and they turn the tables on her at the end.
I love this pick. And Josh, you picked Ardra when you were on One-Off Villains, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I obviously think highly of her as well, and I think you can't argue that she is wise in the crafty and manipulative sense. She's a great pick as far as a wise character.
Oh no, she's definitely wise, and street smarts can definitely account for that. Yeah. That's an awesome pick, Robert.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to my round 5 pick, and I will jump in with my 5 words and a hashtag. This is a big one, so I'm starting off with a bang. Heart, soul, and memory engrams, hashtag, one is my name, the other is not. And I am picking Lieutenant Commander Data from Star Trek TNG. And I'm curious to see if anyone else picks Data, because I had some other picks that I considered, and I moved them off my list, and then I moved them back in. I couldn't keep them off. So I just find him so reasoned and measured, and a great observer of the humanity happening around him as he tries to better himself and become more human. So the episode I picked actually was I toyed between The Offspring and Time's Arrow Part 2, but I chose Time's Arrow Part 2 because I really liked the way that he problem solves in this episode. He was smart enough to adapt to the environment without giving himself away. He plays poker with Cowboy Ducat. He tracks down Guinan, and he's dealing with his own mortality all at the same time in a really reasonable, logical way. And I find that he's just always a good resource for people when they need help, and kind of guy people go to, even though you wouldn't think he's the best resource for that. So, and a couple other episodes like The Most Toys, I love how he dealt with his situation there, being imprisoned by Kivas Fajo. Redemption shows his leadership abilities and the quality of life. He takes it all on himself to figure out that the exocomps are alive and do what it takes to make sure everyone appreciates that. So Data is my pick. Josh, what's your take on Data?
I think, Jim, that's a wonderful pick. I think Data's struggle to become more human and learn more about humanity and fits my definition as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't argue with the pick at all.
Yeah, Robert, how about you? Any views?
No, that's a great pick. Why specifically Time's Arrow? Because I know there are fans that are divided about that two-parter.
Yeah, I just like the way that he was left on his own and figured it out, that he figured out a way to adapt and thrive without giving himself away and knowing what he needed to accomplish. So I really like that part of it. But, I thought about the Offspring too, because he does such a good job in The Offspring of arguing his case as a parent who has the right to make choices for his child.
That's absolutely right. And the discussion in The Offspring on death and parenting, as you said, and loss.
Yeah. And I'm also pretty sure it's the first time Time's Arrow has ever been picked on TrekRanks. So is
it really?
That's why, Robert. I should look that up. I'm not sure. All right, let's jump into round 4. Josh, what's your number 4 pick?
My number 4 pick is 5 words. Learn their motivations. Exploit them. Hashtag, the bigger the risk, the bigger the win. So, if you can guess, this would be Quark.
Yes.
And Quark, it's a little bit of a departure from my Prime Directive in the sense of I don't think of Quark as much in the search for understanding as much, although I think he is still doing that, but I think it's more of he is using the understanding that he's gained in a particularly wise way. And when I think about episodes, there's the one that I picked as my primary episode is Starship Down. And the reason that I picked that is it's gambling wisdom. And if you know me, I like to gamble occasionally.
That's right.
And the wise words that someone passed along to me that I think Quark would it's very similar to the bigger the risk, the bigger the win, is the less you bet, the more you lose when you fail. Or, excuse me, the less you bet, the more you lose when you win. So what I thought was wise about Quark, particularly in this episode, but I'll tie it in a little into bigger picture. In this episode, he's using his shared passion for risk to persuade the trade minister. And the B story in this episode is there's an unexploded missile that crashes into the ship, and he's stuck with this trade minister. And they find out they're trying to disarm or de-arm this missile. And Quark says, if we pick the wrong one, we die. Choose one. It's a gamble. Go with your instincts. You're thinking too much. And then he says, the bigger the risk, the bigger the win. And I thought that's particularly wise in the way he connected with this character. And I think about Quark, and I think about this is what makes him wise to me, is if you think about the House of Quark, for example, he uses honor to persuade the Klingons. He uses honor. In the Maquis, he uses logic to persuade the Vulcans. So I think Quark's gift and his wisdom is using, as I said, the motivations of these other characters, whether it's the desire to gamble or risk things, whether it's the honor that the Klingons have, or whether it's Vulcan logic. He's using each of those things to exploit to get what he wants.
Yeah, that is brilliant. An absolutely great pick. There's so many great examples of his wisdom in that way. And man, I got nothing to add other than I'm really mad at myself for adding kind of a moral compass into my Prime Directive, because that eliminated all Ferengi. I'm not going to lie.
I wonder if that would keep Quark off your list. Right?
Spoiler alert: I have no Ferengi. But Quark is so wise, and that example of the bigger the risk, the larger the reward, when he just grabs the little nodule out of the torpedo. Brilliant. Robert, what's your take on that pick?
That's a great pick. I was toying with the idea of Quark, but I couldn't think of an episode that would work. But no, the Starship Down, that works perfectly.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Such a smart pick.
So I'm wondering, before we go further, I have to ask Robert: are you going to have a triumvirate? Are we going to have the whole crew from Live Fast and Prosper?
No.
No, spoiler alert. Come on.
All right. I was just excited when your last pick made me think of that for some reason.
All right, let's do Robert's next pick right now. What's your number 4 pick, Robert?
Okay, my 5 words and a hashtag. He tried to save Waterworld. Hashtag solitary confinement. My pick is Tom Paris.
Ooh.
And the justification for that pick would be the third definition: insolent, smart-alecky, and fresh. And in all of Trek, he was the closest to being that type of character.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And I picked 30 Days, because 30 Days is this episode where we find out that he decides to make this choice to save this planet that's basically a ball of water over the objections of the entire crew, and he has to pay the price for it.
I think that's a great choice.
Yeah.
And you see him in solitary confinement when he's writing that letter to his father, explaining why he did it. And I think he's kind of glad he did it, but at the same time, he wishes he hadn't.
Yeah, for sure. And throughout the series, he's always cracking wise, and he's usually right. He's usually making the right call. He's usually making the right observation about the situation when he does it. That's a great outside the box pick. 2 in a row, Robert. Fantastic. Josh, any quick takes on that one?
Oh, just I love it. I love the kind of the different way of looking at someone that's wise, and I think that's absolutely right. And you're right. I mean, he has great instincts, and he has, Tom Paris has a core to him that I think is obviously beneath the surface, but just a true wisdom that is a little deeper in him, and I like that pick.
Robert using his book smarts for TrekRanks. I love it.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, let's close out round 4 with my number 4 pick. It's another big one, so 2 for 2. 5 words and a hashtag. Not wise, stupid Admiral Halftel. Hashtag, she's the voice of wisdom for an entire crew. And my choice is Guinan from TNG, and my episode is The Offspring. So I slammed Admiral Halftel, though, because I hate that guy. And for me, Guinan personifies, again, wisdom with her experience and her practical, measured way of problem solving and observing and making a comment on kind of what's happening in front of her, whether it's the measure of a man, obviously, or Time Zero. Young Guinan was actually really good in there. And then Generations, even the Guinan Echo is wise in the Nexus. But I chose the Offspring. She's only in it for a real short bit, but I love that, she understands that wisdom is not what you get from a piece of paper that you got from some decrepit, outdated, old educational institution. She's way more about life experience, and you can see that in giving Law the opportunity to work in the bar and calling out the admiral when he's in there ripping that choice and telling, basically explaining to him everything that she'll get out of it and the fact that he's being a hypocrite. And yeah, I just love her interactions with other people. She was definitely designed to be wise. That's pretty much why the character was put there in 10 Forward in season 2, is to be that kind of observationalist for the crew. And maybe she'll probably even have her higher on this list because she's definitely one of the wisest characters in Trek. But I love me some Guinan. So, Robert, what's your take on Guinan?
Well, Guinan is everything I think that Deanna Troi should have been. Because if you think about it, they gave she was more of a counselor than Troi was.
Yeah, she did end up kind of replacing that role and being kind of a more common sense answer to that with the writers in the seasons ahead once she showed up, for sure. Yeah. Josh, how about you?
Well, Jim, if it hadn't been for my Prime Directive, which kind of did take Guinan off the list, she was on my list, from the moment I thought of wise characters. And so she is at the very, very top of my secondary systems, and including, I'm looking at my sheet right now, I have Guinan and Measure of a Man as the episode I would have picked. So she is absolutely a wonderfully wise character on Star Trek, and the only reason I didn't pick her was I didn't want to pick, as I said, characters that were kind of designed to be wise.
Yeah, she's.
But I think her wisdom rings true today. I rewatched Measure of a Man as I was thinking about, picking her, and just the way she, her wisdom is what, Picard has the great speech, obviously, but it's Guinan and her wisdom that propels him or informs Picard in his thinking and allows him to go even further with it.
Yeah, she is definitely the big fish in the pool of wise characters. Definitely not a deep cut. So no question there.
That's okay.
There'll be on a lot of lists. All right, let's go to the soup round 3. Josh, who's your number 3 wisest character?
I'm going, taking a page from Jim and going big here. So 5 words. Logic is only the beginning. # wisdom comes with age. So if you didn't figure it out, this would be Spock.
Yes, thought that's where you're going.
And I was talking about this topic with my wife, and I mentioned, my initial thoughts, and I had Spock, and I'll talk about why in a second. But she said, I don't think of him as wise. And this is where my # wisdom comes with age. And I think maybe you can argue that in the original series, he's less wisdom and more, logic and knowledge. But I would argue that Spock is at his most wise, particularly as he gets older, as the character develops. And so that leads me to my episode choice, which is actually Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And I think of there are a number of scenes, particularly, I thought about Unification, the second part of Unification. I thought of Star Trek 2009 when Spock meets Spock.
Yep.
And older Spock says to younger Spock, put logic aside, do what feels right. And that's more than logic. Obviously, he's gone further than logic. But so the Wrath of Khan, going back to that, I was thinking about the scene where Captain Kirk is taking over again, or going to change command, and Spock says that each cadet will respond according to his gifts, and in that line he's saying, your gift Jim is commanding, and then he goes on to say that he's worried that Captain Kirk will leave him with a bruised ego, and he says commanding a starship is your first best destiny. Anything else is a waste of material. And I think that is just one example of Spock going further than just what is logic and being wise.
Yeah, totally agree. He, especially later. I mean, when you talk about him in the Kelvin timeline in 2009,
right.
He's embarking wisdom throughout that entire his entire role in that film, manipulating the meetup between Spock and Kirk, knowing how important that is for them, and obviously from the Wrath of Khan. I mean, what's more Star Trek wise than the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few or the one? So, and that is
absolutely
all Spock. I love this pick. He's got wisdom to burn. We love Spock. Robert, what's your take on Spock?
I can't add anything more than what you two have said. When you pick Spock, I was thinking you were going to say Unification Part 2.
Another one.
Because we get the much older Spock,
that's one of the ones I thought of for sure.
So who is essentially the last one standing, because McCoy is 130, and they don't know Scotty's still alive, and Kirk's dead, allegedly.
Well, he's definitely wise in Unification as well.
Yeah.
Even though the Romulans are kind of playing him a little bit, but still wise. Okay. Robert, what's your soup round pick?
Okay, my 5 words and a hashtag. Using any and all means. Hashtag, it's a bomb. My pick, going back to the definition of crafty and shrewd, is when I saw that definition, there was only one person that came to mind, and that is Garak.
Yes, Garak is a great pick.
And the episode that I chose to best highlight it is In the Pale Moonlight.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Wow, this really doesn't apply on my moral codes. But, I mean, who can argue with Garak being one step ahead and being the guy you go to for a solution? He is wise. I love it. Robert, what was your thinking on picking that?
Well, when I said I went to look at the definition and I saw crafty and shrewd, and Garak just sprang to mind. And of all the Garak episodes, the one where he's his most crafty and shrewdest is In the Pale Moonlight. While Sisko's having this moral dilemma, he's essentially planning to kill the Romulan senator and faking all this information to get the Romulans into the war.
So, he is so crafty and shrewd. Josh, what's your take on Garak?
I love Garak, and I mean everybody does. I think he is absolutely wise and shrewd and crafty and everything you said. I don't know that I have anything better to add, other than I think it's a wonderful pick and can't argue that he is a very wise character.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, let's close out the soup round with my number 3 pick. My 5 words in a hashtag. Are the guards also invited? Hashtag logical, flawlessly logical. And it is Spock as well.
Love it.
So we kind of already just talked about it, but I'll just say the episode I picked, I actually went back to TOS original series, and I picked the Enterprise incident because I like the way he approaches this problem and the wisdom he shows in navigating his relationship with the Romulan commander. And there's this moment at the end where they have this long back and forth. I think it just encapsulates why he's so wise. And actually, I'm going to play that clip for you now.
You realize that very soon we will learn to penetrate the cloaking device you stole.
Obviously. Military secrets are the most fleeting of all. I hope that you and I exchanged something more permanent.
was your choice.
It was the only choice possible. You would not respect any other.
It will be our secret.
So I just love how at the end of this he perfectly dissects their relationship at the end of that clip. It was the only choice because you would have not respected any other choice. Now that is some wisdom for me in terms of the decisions he had to make in that episode where he really did have feelings, quote unquote, for the Romulan commander. So some other episodes that I highlighted, Galileo 7, obviously he's learning as he goes. He's not making all the right choices, but he's using his best take on how to problem solve. And of course, at the end, he makes what is a rash but wise decision to send up some flares and save the crew. And we already talked about the Wrath of Khan, and I mentioned the Star Trek 2009. So Spock is a legend. Okay, all right, let's go to round 2. Josh, who's your number 2 pick?
All right, my number 2 pick, 5 words. Student of the human heart. Hashtag photons and force fields. My number 2 pick would be Vic Fontaine.
Okay, that is great.
Space-time. I think Vic, again, kind of fits my Prime Directive in a couple ways. It's not, he is obviously a recurring character, only appearing, I think, in 7 episodes, and really just having an impact in 2, I think, primarily really in 2. And that would be his way, and it's only a paper moon. And I think both of those are examples of why I think of Vic as a wise character and number 2 on my list, but also in pivotal moments for the series. Obviously, in his way, this is the introduction of Vic, and he is instrumental in helping Odo and Kira get together. And then the one that I highlighted as my primary Vic episode is It's Only a Paper Moon, where he saves Nog, really talks him out of living a life in the holodeck, or who knows what else could have happened. And he what I think is particularly wise is when Vic talks about that if he remains in the holosuite, he'll die, but we won't. He'll just disappear a little at a time, and he'll be as hollow as a hologram. And I think of the line, he says, "Look, kid, I don't know what's going to happen to you out there. All I can tell you is you've got to play the cards life deals you. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but at least you're in the game." And I thought, it's wise just in life, and I think it's wonderful that it saves Nog, who obviously is a very important character in the show, and of course it ties back into gambling for me.
Yeah, that's 2 out of 4. I love it.
And Las Vegas, right?
That's a brilliant pick. I will say that Vic Fontaine was, I listed him as my toughest cut. He was right there. He's such a wise character. And for a second there, I thought you were going to pick the Doctor, and I was really going to maybe have an issue. I love the Doctor, but I don't think he's necessarily wise. We'll see if anybody picks him. But that is an awesome pick. Vic Fontaine is definitely wise, and in that episode, he's just so good for Nog. So, Robert, Robert, what's your take on it?
I wish I had picked Vic Fontaine. I didn't even think of Vic Fontaine.
That's the beauty of TrekRanks.
And Ira Stephen Bear even said in like an interview he wanted like a Yoda type figure but spoke in like 60s Rat Pack.
Right.
He's kind of like the addition of Guinan. I've said this in a few different TrekRanks, but it always blows my mind that they added this character at the end of season 6. With everything else they had going on, there is no way adding a basically sentient Vegas crooner 60s hologram should have ever worked, but it works 100%. It's just such a fantastic character. Love him. So good. Great pick. Okay, Robert, what's your number 2 pick?
Okay, I went big for my number 2 pick. My 5 words and a hashtag. Defending Data's right to be, hashtag what is Data. I picked Captain Picard, and my episode is The Measure of a Man.
Fantastic pick. We love that.
Wonderful.
There are a lot of instances of Captain Picard being wise, but in Measure of a Man, he has to defend Data's right of personhood to the Federation. So he has to, this organization that he served, that whose motto is to seek out new life, and they're saying Data isn't a person, he's property. So he has to defend him and win this case so he can still have Data as a crewmate and as a friend.
Yeah, of course. I mean, spectacular pick. Well, let me just jump to this right now. Because Jean-Luc Picard is my number 2 pick as well. So, Josh, before we get your thoughts, let me just jump in and I'll give you my 5 words and a hashtag. Mintakans rewarded by captain's wisdom. Hashtag religion sucks. So my episode is Who Watches the Watchers from TNG season 3. And I actually thought Picard was going to be my number 1. He's my all-time favorite Trek character for me, and it's definitely because of his wisdom and the way he approaches topics and the way he leads. He's just a wise guy, and I love that. I picked this episode because I love the way he teaches Nuria, the leader of the Mintakans, in this episode about why her people are special and why they don't need this fake deity to guide them. And that's one of my favorite moments in the history of Trek. I love everything about it. So he's a great leader. He's reasoned. He's methodical. He uses common sense. He doesn't just follow the rules. I love the way he commands. He lets his crew, he listens to them. He lets them, he doesn't micromanage them. He lets them stand on their own. So I think, obviously, Measure of a Man defending Data is one great episode. The Drumhead is also another great Picard speech where he's addressing the idiots in a witch hunt. I love the way he battled with Q over and over again. I love the way he stands up to the Federation in Insurrection. And I love this moment. One little moment at the end of in the middle of this episode, Attached, where Beverly realizes that she hears his thoughts when they're trying to decide which direction to go. And he just makes an authoritative choice. Oh, this is the way to go. And she realizes, you actually don't know the way to go. You're just saying that because, and he basically says, as a captain, I need to be authoritative and, make people understand that, believe in the choice.
I'm not sure whether we should go over this hill or that one. The topography on this map is a little vague.
Let me see. This way.
You don't really know, do you?
What?
I mean, you're acting like you know exactly which way to go, but you're only guessing. Do you do this all the time?
No, but there are times when it is necessary for a captain to give the appearance of confidence.
Love that moment. Love Picard. Great pick, Robert. I love when there's a back-to-back duplicate. So, Josh, what's your take on Jean-Luc Picard?
Well, you both have said pretty much everything there is to say. What I can tell you is that I wanted to put Picard on my list so much that I have 4 episodes written down here, including The Drumhead, Measure of a Man, Matter of Time, even Skin of Evil, as examples of the wisdom of Picard. And I just didn't, because it didn't quite fit what I said was my prime directive. But I think as far as wise characters within the world of Star Trek, Jean-Luc Picard has to be right really on every list except mine.
Yeah, no, I love it. But it didn't fit your prime directive. I like
right.
That. Makes sense. All right, well, let's go to round 1 and get our top picks for our top 5 wisest characters. Josh, who's your number 1 pick?
So, Jim, get ready to fire the phasers.
All right.
5 words. His mental pathways enlightened us.
Oh.
Hashtag we learn with him. And if you haven't figured it out again, this would be Data.
Love it.
My wisest character. And the episode I picked, Jim, I actually have 3 episodes written down. Time Zero, which is the one I would pick, The Offspring, and Data's Day. So we're very much in sync. So I don't know that I have much more to add.
Wait, which episode did you pick?
Time Zero.
Are you kidding me? We both chose Time Zero? That blows my mind. Because I thought that was like a way out there pick.
No, I thought that's why I was laughing as you were talking about it. It's the one I picked as the one.
It's right. You had the Offspring. What was the other one you said?
Data's Day.
Oh yeah, that's a great.
And what I liked, and we talked about Time Zero. So what I liked about Data's Day, and just a little bit, and why it's not the episode I would pick, is I thought when Dr. Crusher teaches Data to dance, and Data understands the technical aspects of dancing, tap dancing, but he doesn't understand rather the social interaction part. And that's where the wisdom comes out of his learning that part of it and trying to gain understanding in that which is beyond just knowledge. And it's how to interact and how to do those things that aren't mechanical.
Yeah, no, that's a good example.
But no, I thought Time Zero and Offspring, where Time Zero was the one I was going to talk about, but we already did that, so we're good.
All right, I love it. Fantastic pick, another duplicate. And all right, Robert, let's hear your number one pick. What do you got?
Okay, get ready for this deep cut reference.
Love your deep cuts.
My 5 words and a hashtag. Machines are programmed by people. Hashtag Perry Mason in space. My number one pick is Samuel T. Cogley. For those of you not familiar, he was Captain Kirk's lawyer in the episode Court Martial.
Wow. You just picked Samuel T. Cogley. I love you, Robert. I love this pick. Court Martial, books. It's about books, man.
Exactly.
He is wise. There's no doubt. This is a great pick.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great pick. Why'd you pick him?
Well, when you sent us what the topic was, this was the first person I thought of.
Really?
Before I even looked up the definition of wise. Because he's this lawyer, and for those of you who haven't seen the episode recently, he's an eccentric lawyer who doesn't believe in machines. To him, machines are these cold, heartless devices, and if you want to learn the law and what the people that wrote the law, it's books, whether it be the Constitution, the Articles of Martian Freedom, some other thing I can't remember. He's just this very impassioned man who believes that a human being is on trial and that a computer should not be the final sentencing of this man. It should be the actions of a man, not of a computer.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect reason for picking him. And yeah, I love this pick. I love Samuel T. Cogley. He is an old school wise and a great representation of your definitions as you laid it out there. Josh, what's your take on this pick?
Oh, I think it's inspired. One that I did not think of.
No, me neither.
But Robert, I think it's a wonderful pick, and one of the things that makes TrekRanks so fantastic is when you get things like this that people haven't thought of before. And I'll have to go back and watch now with the eye to wisdom.
Oh, so glorious. Great pick, Robert. Okay, well, I have actually a similar number one pick. My 5 words and a hashtag. What's so funny about reaching hashtag for the moon? And it is from the city on the edge of forever, Edith Keeler.
Ooh,
I like it.
And I'm going to tell you, this is not the character I thought I would ever put at number one. And sometimes I get emotional thinking about her because she's just so amazing. But for me, I had her as the single wisest character in Trek. She just has this, as Spock described her, an uncommon insight. And she always is like one step ahead of Kirk and Spock in this whole episode. She sees right through Kirk. She sees right through them from the beginning, literally from her first line, when she says, "A lie is a terrible way to say hello." And literally every single line of dialogue for her is some kind of believable, wise speculation about how the world can be and will be. And when she says, what's so funny about reaching for the moon, and someday they're going to take all the money that they spend on war and death and spend it on life. I just love this character. And there's another soundbite I'm going to play where she confronts Spock and Kirk after Spock has stolen some tools. I'm going to play that right now.
I still have a few questions I'd like to ask about you two. And don't give me that. Questions about little old us, look. You know as well as I do how out of place you two are around here.
Interesting. Where would would you estimate we belong, Miss Keeler?
You? At his side, as if you've always been there and always will. And you belong in another place. I don't know where or how. I'll figure it out eventually.
I'm finished with the furnace.
Captain. Even when he doesn't say it, he does.
And I love the line at the end when she cuts off Spock and says, Captain, just finishes his sentence. Even when he doesn't say it, he says it. I love Edith Keeler. She's just so wise and one of my all-time favorite Trek characters. So, Josh, what's your take on Edith Keeler?
I think, as I've said, a fantastic pick. I have to go back. It's been a couple of years since I've watched City on the Edge of Forever, and I didn't think of Edith Keeler, and she didn't quite fit my Prime Directive, being that I wanted characters that were, more than just one-off. But at the same time, you cannot argue that she didn't have an enormous impact. So she could have been on my list for that reason. And I think until you said it, I hadn't thought of her as wise. But just as you're saying it, and as I'm remembering the episode, it absolutely, everything she said, as you said, was prescient and
yeah,
really, it's just a wonderful pick.
And observational in terms of Kirk and Spock.
Right.
Robert, what's your take?
Yeah, I think Kirk said it best in that episode when he finds out she has to die, that she was right, but at the wrong time.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Why'd you have to bring that up, Robert? Jeez. All right. That was fantastic. Let's rattle off a few quick secondary systems picks. Josh, what do you got on your secondary systems list?
Well, let's see. I already mentioned Picard and Guinan. For me, I was thinking about whether or not I thought of Garrick. I thought of Tuvok. I was looking for, when I was thinking about Spock, I was looking for, thought about the other Vulcans as far as in Spock obviously was the one that I thought was most wise. But I think Picard and Guinan were the two right at the top of my, and I already talked about those two, and you all have at the top of my secondary systems list.
Yeah, love it.
I also gave sorry to jump back in. I also gave quite a bit of thought to whether or not I thought Neelix fit within my definition of wise, and particularly in his kind of the way he worked with people.
Yeah, I could see that.
His kind of small area of wisdom and his gift, if you will.
Yeah, he would probably fit Robert's 4 definitions. So, sure. Robert, how about you? What was on your secondary systems?
I had Spock. I had Sarek, and I couldn't think of an episode because Sarek was only in 3 episodes and 2 movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the wormhole aliens.
Oh
yeah.
Okay, I like that outside the box pick. I had the Guardian of Forever, so it's very, very similar. All right, any others, Robert? That's it?
Yeah, that was it for me, yeah.
Okay. So I said my toughest cut was Vic Fontaine. My other tough cut was Dax, the symbiont, the 200-year-old symbiont.
So you're going just straight Dax and not Jadzia?
Straight Dax. No, not Jadzia. Definitely not Curzon.
No Ezri?
There's some highs and lows. Ezri, yeah, sure. I love Ezri. But there's some highs and lows for Dax, but 200 years of experience is pretty good. I would even throw Varad in there, that little Weasley dude that stole Dax.
Right. I thought a lot about Dax just for that reason too.
Yeah. I also I'm a Chakotay guy. I love Chakotay, so I'm not going to pick him, but I do think he's wise. I think Phlox is a pretty good pick.
Mm-hmm.
I had Pike from the Kelvin timeline. I had the Cytherians from the Nth Degree. They're more inquisitive than wise, I think. Kyle Paka was one. Quinn from Death Wish, the rogue Q. And a friend of ours, Ken Riley, who's been on the show many times, suggested Cosimo from Non Sequitur. So I really like that.
Ah, yeah.
All right, and then I'm going to get one special shout out to one of the real life characters that appeared in Trek and one of the wisest people who ever lived, Mark Twain, also from Times Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of wise people out there. All right, I love this topic. I feel smarter just from having had this conversation. All right, let's wind this episode down and jump into our weekly regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, Josh, recap your picks here real quick.
So my number 5 pick was 7 of 9. Number 4 was Quark. Number 3 was Spock. Number 2 was Vic Fontaine. And number 1 was Data.
All right, so you had 2 from Deep Space Nine, 1 from TOS, 1 from TNG, and 1 from Voyager. So spreading it around pretty good. Robert, how about your top 5?
Number 5 was Ardra. Number 4 was Tom Paris. Number 3 was Garak. Number 2 was Captain Picard. And number 1 was Samuel T. Cogley.
Fantastic. So you really spread it around. You had 2 from TNG, 1 Voyager, 1 DS9, and 1 TOS. I like that we're spreading it around. All right, and my top 5 were Data, Times Arrow from TNG, Guinan, The Offspring, also from TNG, Spock, The Enterprise Incident from TOS, Jean-Luc Picard, Who Watches the Watchers from TNG, and Edith Keeler, The City on the Edge of Forever from TOS. So I did not spread it around. I had 3 from TNG and 2 from TOS. All right, so the breakdown, we got a lot of stats here. I love tracking this. So we're going to give the Kelvin timeline one little asterisk shout out because we talked about Spock in the Kelvin timeline. But Enterprise and Discovery had no picks. We had 2 from Voyager, 3 from Deep Space Nine, 4 from TOS, and 6 from TNG. So that was very interesting. We had 3 duplicates, so that's a pretty high duplicate ratio. And let's break it down. We had 1 pick each for an Elorian, a hologram, a Cardassian, a Ferengi, and a Borg. We had 2 picks for androids, 2 picks for Vulcans, and we had 5 humans who got picked. Those are our stats. That's our breakdown. That was an awesome conversation. But as we do every week, we have once again entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart the show, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
This week, it's a little bit of a special temporal causality loop for us. It's a real temporal deep dive, so try and follow along here. We're going to relay 3 different guilty pleasure lists from 3 different listeners on 3 different shows, even though we've only done 2 guilty pleasure episodes. So we're going to start with a jump back 3 months to episode 35 and our top 5 TNG guilty pleasure episodes. We got a great list in from Trek Geek Bill over at the Trek Geeks, and he had a couple of great 5 words and a hashtags as part of his list. So I'm going to rattle off his picks really quick. He had number 5, Unnatural Selection, which is a great TNG guilty pleasure. We had his number 4, The Arsenal of Freedom. At number 3, he had The Naked Now. At number 2, Too Short a Season. And number 1, The Royale. And I love this 5 words and a hashtag here. Need some spreading around money, hashtag not great, but it is fun. And that is what guilty pleasures are all about. All right, so following that up, now we're going to jump back just a couple of weeks to episode 42 and our top 5 Voyager guilty pleasure episodes. And that was our second guilty pleasure episode that we did. We got a great list in from Angsty Happy Dance on Twitter, who is at LHA_again. And we've heard from her before. She sends in a lot of great lists. Her list was number 5, Whose Hand at the End, hashtag Proud Mama Bear and Vulcan's Care. She had Twisted. Her other 5 words on the hashtag, what happened to the babies? Hashtag, who said it was your idea? Threshold. Her number 3, big red reset button of doom warning, hashtag, what might have been, and it was resolutions. Her number 2, that was it, question mark, exclamation point, the long and winding road to parenthood, the Q and the gray. And her number 1, which I love, is it's a lonely in the DQ, hashtag delete the wife, which we all know is Fairhaven. So really loved her 5 words and a hashtag there. And now, as some of you might remember, we had actually planned to do our DS9 Guilty Pleasure episodes, but we haven't been able to book that yet. We had a couple of scheduling issues in terms of the guys we're going to get on for that show. But we had announced it, but then we canceled it. We did Voyager instead. But we have a temporal causality loop into the future because someone sent us a list of their DS9 Guilty Pleasures. So for the first time, we're going to preview our DS9 Guilty Pleasure episode, which is probably going to be like episode 55. So probably in a few months we'll get to that. So this one came in from Brian Yates, who is at history_Trek. And here's his DS9 Guilty Pleasures. He had, I'm going to do the 5 words in a hashtag. Aliens live vicariously through imaginations. Hashtag Cisco's baseball, if wishes were horses, which is an awesome pick. The next one is one I think everyone's going to pick. Quark learns a lesson, maybe? Hashtag Space Jumanji. It is, of course, Move Along Home. And he had Rom stands up to Quark. Hashtag Sean O'Brien, which, of course, is Bar Association. His number 2 pick, Quarsh unleashes confusing station-wide virus. Hashtag overworked O'Brien. That is the episode Babel. I can't believe he didn't use Quick the Resource Vision. Can't remember what any of those Babel slurs were, but there was all kinds of crazy ones. All right, and then his number 1 pick, DS9 Locked Room Murder Mystery, hashtag Joran Dax, and it's Field of Fire. So I love that. We get a little preview of the DS9 Guilty Pleasure episodes, which we will do someday. So that was a true temporal causality loop this week. Basically, it was our version of All Good Things. We had 3 different timelines going. That was great. All right. Thanks again to everyone for all the feedback. Definitely keep those lists coming to me at TrekRanks so we can retweet them, but we also want to hear from you too. So please put together your own list of top 5 wisest characters and give us a call. We'd love to hear from you directly. You can call us at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527 at 609-512-LLAP. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are doing a companion piece to this episode. So hopefully you like this show, because next up we're tweaking it just slightly, and we're doing our top 5 weirdest characters. So that's going to be quite a bit different, I think. Although maybe some of these characters will actually apply to that. I don't know. Could be a one-off character, could be a regular. Very curious to see where this one takes us. So Josh and Robert, as we do every week, what would you choose off the top of your head as one of your top 5 weirdest characters? Josh.
The first thing that popped in my head was the Horta.
The Horta. Okay, that's good. That is definitely kind of a weird character. I mean, it's a silicon-based life form.
Right.
Breathing rocks.
I'll give it some more thought and see if that if it would make my list. But that's the.
I like that. I love that one. All right, Robert, you set a high bar here with your top 5 wisest characters. Who's your first weirdest character?
I'm thinking of Threshold Tom Paris.
Oh, Robert, perfection.
Wise and weird, right?
He should be on every list.
And Voyager Guilty Pleasure, and yeah, everything.
That is spectacular. All right. Awesome job, you guys. Just a huge thanks to Josh Duffy and Robert Red Sweater Reyes, 2 awesome guests. Any final thoughts from you guys? I hope you guys had a good time.
I have nothing else to add other than I very much appreciate being on, and it was a fun topic to research and talk about.
Super fun. Robert, first time on TrekRanks.
Yeah, it was great to be here. It was a great time. can't wait to see what the folks on Twitter have to say about my top 5.
All right, they're gonna love your top 5 because it's fantastic. All right, great job. Thanks again, everyone, for engaging with us here on episode 44 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
It is a limitation we must learn to accept, Law.
Then why do you still try to emulate humans? What purpose does it serve except to remind you that you are incomplete?
I have asked myself that many times, as I have struggled to be more human. Until I realized it is the struggle itself that is most important. We must strive to be more than we are, Law. It does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards.
You are wise, Father.
It is the difference between knowledge and experience.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.
Funny about man reaching for the moon.
How do you know?
I just know, that's all. I feel it. And more, I think that one day they're going to take all the money that they spend now on war and death
And make them spend it on life.
Yes.